Danny Cooch Korchmar. Danny Cooch Korchmar. Danny Cooch Korchmar.
Oh no, he appeared. He's here. We said it 3 times.
Go.
He's here.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your host, Sean Hartman, special agent working with a top-secret joint task force of the United States military and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, formed to investigate troubling abstractions known as the Black Rose cases.
Oh, ooh. I'm suddenly intimidated.
I'm intrigued.
Ooh, you should be.
Well, I'm co-host Jeremy, and all that confusing government talk ain't for me. I'm a simple man with a simple dream. That's the podcast.
Aw.
Well, I'm co-host Peter Cook, author of the new book, Rye, Black Roses, and Donuts, a history of JDs in the arts, from Salinger to Dilla.
Ooh.
Nice.
I was trying to make the connections when you just read the title, and I wasn't getting there, so.
Did you get it by the end?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
When you said the names of the people, I did get it, yes.
Well, I'm glad I don't have to rethink the title of my upcoming book. Joining us here on I'd Buy That for $1 today is a writer, journalist, and musician. First time on the program. Welcome, Jessi Phillips.
Thank you so much. I'm honored and delighted and insulted that I wasn't asked on sooner, to be honest.
That's fair. We've known you the entire time that we've been doing this podcast for 6 years or whatever it is now, and it's overdue.
You've had some distinguished guests who have a much more encyclopedic knowledge of music than I do. I'm just a gal who likes J.D. Souther, who's been saying his name wrong for like 15 years.
Yeah. Is that, do we have an official verification that it's J.D. Souther? I watched an interview where they introduced him as that, but maybe he was just being polite and didn't correct them. I've heard people say Souther.
I like Souther better.
I've always said Souther with like a th that doesn't need to be said.
Yeah. Souther.
Yeah.
Souther is cooler, but I'll go with whatever you guys want.
Souther.
And so we are talking about, on the front of the album, he's credited as John David Souther. And the album is
Black Rose.
From 1976.
Yeah.
On David Geffen's Asylum label.
These things are accurate.
It's all right? Okay, good.
Now, was that off the top of the dome, Peter?
It was.
Oh, wow. Well done. Well, let's play the people a track without further ado. What song would you like to start with, Jessi?
I think we should start with If You Have Crying Eyes, the second track.
Ooh, all right. This is side A, track 2, If You Have Crying Eyes.
If you have crying eyes, bring them along. Or if you don't feel at ease, maybe I know your song. I don't mind if it takes us a little longer. I'm willing to stay here and love you till dawn. It'll be alright. Baby, the one that you made up for me. It might be your night. now the worst of it's gone. I don't care if it takes us a few hours. If you got the heart for it, I'll find the power to make it all right. It might be your night, or you changed it so.
I find it interesting in that song how many things are actually going on, though it doesn't feel like a wall of sound or anything. It feels almost like stripped down, like it's a really kind of basic track or like acoustic or whatever, but there's a ton of different instruments kind of coming in and out, and
multiple voices.
Yeah, that song's really about the singing to me. So, he really is such an exceptional singer to me. And the rest of it kind of falls away besides their two voices for me as I'm listening to it.
Yeah.
Which that's an expert arrangement of the song. If that's the case, that there could still be that much going on, but you really just focus in on the voices. The other voice in there, the distinctly female voice, was pretty good too.
It was indeed.
Pretty good.
Who might that be? They should have been a star.
That was Ms. Linda Ronstadt, who recorded several of JD's songs. They also had a romantic relationship. I'm not sure if it was going on when they made this record.
Yeah, well, I believe that they knew each other from pretty early on in their music careers, going back to like the late 60s, early 70s. I believe that like Linda Ronstadt, JD, members of the Eagles, all knew each other really early on in their attempts at becoming musicians in California.
And you once again betray my timeline. But yes.
Another big secret that J.D. Souther was involved with the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just Google his name, the first like 5 articles that pop up are like, guy who wrote songs for the Eagles.
Yeah, which I've known his name for a very long time because of that association. Before the whole world told me this wasn't cool, when I was a teenager, I was a big fan of the Hotel California album, and he wrote a couple songs on that one. And I would I didn't have much internet access in the mid to late 90s, so I would just stare at the liner notes and see the names involved. Different time, I tell you.
We should mention that this is not the first time we've played a J.D. Souther track on the podcast, and also the last time we played him, it was a duet with Linda Ronstadt as well, from the Urban Cowboy soundtrack.
Yeah, Hearts Against the Wind.
Best song on that album.
True.
And a lot of people heard it because that's a very popular episode. That's been getting a lot of plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jessi, so we asked you around the time of JD's passing a few months back. That was in September of 2024, I believe. We had asked you, I think you posted that you were listening to him, and you've been a fan for quite some time. Is this album perhaps your favorite, or do you celebrate the whole catalog?
So I really came to him through Linda Ronstadt, who I love very much. The song Faithless Love, which he has a version of on this record. She also has a version of it on her breakthrough record, Heart Like a Wheel. It's kind of a similar song to the title track, but much better. It's my favorite song on that album. That's probably one of my top 20 songs ever written, actually.
Wow.
I love that song so much. And he sings harmonies on hers. And I was like, who's this? My friend said, oh, that's actually J.D. Souther. He has some good records too. And we listened to this one. I love his version equally of that song. So,
yeah. So this was your kind of introduction to his solo catalog, was this album?
I also love his first record that has some great songs on it too. The Jesus in 3/4 Time is a great song. And then his song Her Town 2. His duet with James Taylor is also maybe one of my top. Let's put it in the top 30 songs. I love that song very much too. And that's like equally, he really plays a prominent role in that version. So yeah, he just has some good songs, you know?
Yeah, he is known for writing some good songs.
Indeed.
Sean, you actually suggested I get this album. There was a $2 copy in a bin on the sidewalk when I was visiting you in Philly in 2022. You were clearly already familiar with this record.
Yeah, and I came across this record in the most classic, simple fashion, just flipping through the bins, and really liked the artwork. And was like, wow, this is cool. Put it on. Yeah, was instantly pretty struck with the vocals and just the whole arrangement. Like, it's kind of country, but it also obviously shows a lot of other influence. And pretty much I was kind of instantly a fan after hearing this album.
It is a striking cover, that black rose growing in the cracked desert ground.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like a metaphor.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's a very confident, sexy record, if I do say so myself. This record makes me want to sit in a hot tub in Laurel Canyon in like 1978, like a giant goblet of wine.
Yeah, it certainly has. It's obviously, no one would really classify it as yacht rock, but it kind of has a classy, laid back vibe throughout.
It has that sheen on it, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, apparently they spent a long time working on the production of this, and it was a real labor of love. I think more people should hear it. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Personally, when I listen to this album, it makes me want to, I don't know, put on a tuxedo, stand in some fog under a dark moonlit night and smoke a cigarette.
That sounds like a normal night for you, Sean.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he looks so cool on the back. I mean, the kids today really need to know how cool he was.
Yeah.
And how weird he looks on the back.
Yeah, just look at the back of the jacket to get a sense of the man. I watched an interview with him from a few years back, and he didn't look much different from that.
He's a dish. No question.
Yeah. Inarguable as he drew some of rock and roll's most famous ladies. So,
well, should we get into his story, Jeremy?
let's get into his story. Mr. John David Souther was born November 2nd, 1945 in Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. Michigan represent.
Yeah. He was only here like temporarily, though, and mostly grew up in Amarillo, Texas.
Yeah, at first, a lot of the bios made it look like he was an infant when he moved to Texas, but it seems he was probably in Michigan for the first 5 or 6 years of his life.
Yeah. His father was a singer, a crooner specifically, who performed as Johnny Warren. After John David was born, apparently his mother was pushing for the dad to stop touring around all the time and be at home with the family. So he became an agent for MCA Records. Eventually, I guess, started a music and record shop also. So, yeah, when he was young, JD got to meet some famous folks like the Mills Brothers, Victor Bouge, and the Three Sounds. So, kind of old school names. But, yeah, he got to meet some famous musicians as a youngster.
Yeah, ones that were big just after the war when he was a youngster.
Yeah. Yeah, he learned violin, clarinet, saxophone, and guitar as a youth.
How old?
I don't know. I couldn't find info on when he started, which is probably for the best.
Yeah, he didn't scrutinize it too much.
Yeah.
I think he talked about playing drums in high school, right? So by then he was already...
Yeah, his first band, the Cinders, he actually played drums in. So he did it all from an early age. He could play pretty much all the instruments in a band by the time he was in high school. So after he graduated from Amarillo College, JD kind of made his way to LA. It sounds like he was in Florida at one point and was kind of rambling a bit before landing in LA, where he just started hanging out at this music club called the Troubadour, hanging out with these folks like Glenn Fry and Linda Ronstadt, who Linda would end up becoming his girlfriend for a while, and Glenn became his roommate. So he met some famous folks pretty much right out of the gate in LA.
But were they famous yet either?
No. No, he then was helping Linda put together a band to back her up so she could, start doing more than the open mics they were all doing together.
Mm-hmm.
And that band eventually became the Eagles.
Yeah. Yep. Just another one of those little groups where everyone succeeded and became unimaginably famous.
I love hearing about that time and just what it must have been like swimming around in that stew of LA at that time. It's like catnip to me. I can't hear enough about it.
Yeah, and he became friends with James Taylor around then. He ended up he decided not to join that band that backed Linda, then got to audition for David Geffen because his buddy Jackson Brown got him an audition. Yep. So he's like in the background of all these famous singers, kind of like one layer back. You find JD over and over in this scene. He put together a band with Glenn Frey that was called Long Branch Penny Whistle.
Yeah, I saw that name.
Yeah. And that included Ry Cooder, Jim Gordon, who is a huge studio guy, and James Burton, and also Doug Kershaw, the famous Cajun fiddler. So big names in this group that I had never heard of before researching this.
Do you have an approximate year on when Long Branch Penny Whistle was around? Are we talking?
I think we're talking like 69, 70.
Okay.
Right in there.
So this is, we are talking after, like Linda Ronstadt had done the Stone Ponies, at least. Like she had done that group and had some success there.
Yeah, because she was kind of branching out, doing her thing, and he's like, this is my thing I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. That didn't really take off, and then he, as I mentioned, did that audition for David Geffen, who's like, yeah, go ahead and record an album. So that's when he did his first album, John David Souther, in 1972. Well, before we dig in further, let's play another song, shall we?
We shall.
What do we have next?
We're going to play my favorite song on the record, Faithless Love.
All right.
Yeah, I knew as soon as I heard this song when I'd listened to this once or twice since I picked up a copy, but when I listened preparing for the episode, I knew that I just had a feeling, knowing your music and type of songs that you perform, I was like, that's going to be one of them.
Absolutely.
That's side A, track 4, Faithless Love.
Faithless love, like a river flows, like raindrops falling on a broken rose, down in some valley where nobody goes, where the night blows in like a cold, dark wind. Faithless love, like a river flows. Faithless love, where did I go wrong? Too many stories, too many heartbreak songs, where nobody's right, nobody's wrong. Faithless love will find you, in the misery entwine you. Faithless love, where did I go? Well, I guess I'm standing in the hall of broken dreams. That's That's the way it sometimes goes. And every new love.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a voice and lyrics person. I feel like for me to really love a piece of music, it has to be really exceptional, at least one of those. And his lyrics, you know, the individual lines don't necessarily stand out to you or grab you as you're listening. They kind of just wash over you. But I mean, his voice sounds so good on this. He really writes songs for singers. That's what I like about him. I think that's why Linda Ronstadt and the Eagles liked his songs so much. Whatever you want to say about the Eagles, they're good singers. Newsflash. And yeah, I mean, the song is just like so well put together. It's so fun to sing. I've covered this song a few times. It's really hard to sing. His songs are really hard to sing. They have big jumps. There's like a lot of big moments, a lot of quiet moments. And also he just has like a little bit of like an edge or like sandpaperiness to his voice that kind of counters like how sweet this song actually is. Like if James Taylor sang this song, it wouldn't have nearly the impact, I don't think. But he has kind of like a darkness or, you know, a little bit of an edge to him that I think kind of like adds a nice balance to this song.
Yeah, I feel like James Taylor is the ready for mainstream radio version of J.D. Souther.
Yeah.
Yep, have that dark side kind of pulled out.
Yeah.
Just the warmth, just the warm part.
Yeah, it's wonderful because he's not a super flashy singer, but every time you get those little quavers in his voice, those little bits of emotion that he puts into it, and it's just unbeatable.
Well, despite his lovely voice, his first record did not sell. So David Geffen was like, well, what if you just joined your buddies, the Eagles? And he again declined and was like, yeah, no. Apparently he enjoyed writing songs with them, but kind of thought the personalities altogether were too much, and he thought they were already a complete band as it was, and they didn't require his services. So he instead, David Geffen kind of talked him into Souther, Hillman, and Fure, with Chris Hillman, who was from the Byrds and Flying Burrito Brothers, worked with Graham Parsons, and Richie Fure from Buffalo Springfield and Poco.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a super group. I checked it out. I actually hadn't heard it before doing research for this, and I would say it's perfectly fine.
I've never heard of it. Yeah.
I feel like I have an LP by them or I've listened to one, and it's good but not exceptional is what I kind of remember.
Yeah, the first album's okay. The second album I thought was a little better, Trouble in Paradise in 1975. It's like interesting arrangements, but I think when I read JD's reflection on doing that group, it kind of made sense that they didn't collaborate on anything. They were just kind of taking turns writing songs. So you're getting three totally different songwriters and perspectives, and they're just mashing them together as if it's one thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a band put together by the label that didn't really gel as a creative unit.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what it was. But there's some stuff in there that's decent, so worth checking out if you really like this. But it didn't really take off either way, and JD returned to recording solo to do his second album, which is this album, 1976's Black Rose.
Yeah, this came out the same year as Hotel California, which he has, as I said, he did New Kid in Town and Victim of Love were the songs he wrote on Hotel California.
Yeah, and he wrote 3 out of the 5 top or number 1 singles that the Eagles had. He did Best of My Love, New Kid in Town, as you mentioned, and then the Eagles' final number 1 single, Heartache Tonight, that he co-wrote with the Eagles and fellow Detroiter Bob Seger.
Well, yeah, Glenn Frey from the Eagles is originally from Michigan too. I think from the east side of the state. So some strong Michigan representation and Heartache tonight.
You love to see it.
I heard someone say in some writing about him where I read that people think the reason he didn't get more famous is because he gave his best songs to the Eagles and Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
Well, as long as his paperwork was in order, he probably made a heck of a lot of money on that.
I think he did,
and didn't have to deal with the fame.
Yeah.
Which he strikes me as someone that would be okay with that.
Yeah, he mentioned, I saw an interview where the interviewer was like, do you ever regret giving your best songs to them? And he was like, no, I still get the checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard him say, like, I love work, meaning making music, but I love my life more. I don't love it more than my life. It's like, I just want to hang out on my farm and like pet my dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could probably walk down the street and live a normal life.
Yeah. He said he didn't want to go to the grocery store and had people stopping him. And so I don't think he wanted that level of fame.
Yeah, he was already a dish.
He's
right?
already a dish.
It doesn't
get that attention anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'll throw that out there too. He, on top of dating Linda Ronstadt, also dated Joni Mitchell and Stevie Nicks.
And I also read Judy Sill.
And Judy Sill.
She was on Asylum Records. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was one of the first signed to that label.
The line in her song, Jesus Was a Crossmaker, which is probably in my top 20 all-time songs. That song's incredible.
Yeah.
But her line about a bandit and a heartbreaker is referring to JD.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that from the documentary.
Love it.
As you might imagine, from a guy who's, in the shadows of all these famous folks, this album is chock full of famous folks on it.
Yeah, it was kind of a who's who.
Tell us more.
Oh, okay. I happen to have a list here. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is like a third of the people who are on this thing, and I just picked out like the most recognizable names to me. So, just singing going on in this album, you have Don Henley, David Crosby, Art Garfunkel, and Linda Ronstadt. On those beautiful arrangements was David Campbell, who's come up multiple times.
Beck's father.
Father of musician Beck.
Beck Hansen Campbell.
Yeah, and his credits are bonkers too.
Hundreds and hundreds of releases, yeah.
Yeah, that's how you get that expert arrangement we discussed.
Yeah. Yeah, some jazz guys on here I didn't expect. Donald Byrd on the flugelhorn and Stanley Clarke on the bass.
Wow.
Yeah. As you might expect, you got Glenn Frey on guitar. You also have Joe Walsh on guitar.
Who had just joined the Eagles.
Yep.
Yeah.
Drums, you got like Russ Kunkel and Jim Keltner.
Yeah. Big names.
A name I didn't recognize, but is also a huge name apparently. Danny Kuch Korchmar.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's been on a few things. I don't know that we've really discussed him at great length, though, anytime that he's been on a record we've talked about.
Yeah. And as I mentioned, there's 20 more names that have insane credits on top of that. So if you want to know more about those people, go check it out yourself. It's too much.
I get the sense this album was very fun and very expensive to make.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds expensive. It looks expensive by the names on it. But, it's David Geffen doing a record with J.D. Souther. So
I also heard another David Geffen related story that he told in an interview where JD said he was in LA and he was, playing for all kinds of record execs, and they kept saying his music was not commercial enough. He was getting mad about it. I think he's a kind of a cantankerous guy a little bit. I get the sense in interviews. So he went to David Geffen's house and played him what he thought were his least commercial songs, because he was just like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And David Geffen was like, great, and signed him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, Geffen was, I feel like he was willing to often take chances on people. He was willing to let an artist grow, too. That's the impression I at least get. Maybe some people would have different stories, but he doesn't seem to be like too strict if your first record didn't necessarily sell. He might try to put you where he thinks you might best fit, or just reinvent the wheel with you. That's, at least in the 70s, it seems that was the case. He really wanted to allow artists to do their best work, regardless of how commercially successful it was. And he had enough that were hitting that he could take some chances on people.
Yeah, and this is maybe JD's best work, I'd say, as far as an album.
I think as a whole album, it definitely is. There's songs that I really like on other stuff. But yeah, this is the one that feels the most him, I think, to me.
Yeah, I saw there was a 40th anniversary reissue that came out on Omnivore with some bonus tracks in 2016.
Cool.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I just happened to find that and was surprised. I mean, I think JD gave some extensive liner notes in that as well, just his feelings on it. And he seems very happy with what they created here. And just hopes more people hear it. So once again, I mean, I'm sorry he's not ever going to hear this episode, but hopefully we can get a few more people interested in this album.
I think he's listening.
Aw. This album doesn't really hit either as far as the charts go. And JD kind of gets a reputation as more of an architect. He writes the songs. He kind of crafted what would become like the SoCal country rock kind of sound that would, the Eagles kind of carried to its extreme, I would say.
Yeah. The Flying Burrito Brothers and Michael Nesmith sort of set the template for that, and then the Eagles made it commercially viable.
Yeah, and as was mentioned, he gave away a lot of his bigger songs. He also did Prisoner in Disguise with Linda Ronstadt, or for Linda Ronstadt. So, yeah, he was in the background. He did have one charting hit. His biggest hit came on his next album, You're Only Lonely, from the album You're Only Lonely in 1979, which went number 1 adult contemporary and number 7 on the Billboard charts.
That's a big hit.
Yeah.
I don't think I was actually aware that he ever hit that high on the Billboard with one of his own recordings.
It was an anomaly for his career. He didn't have that big of a hit again before or after. So I noticed he alluded to like personal issues in the 80s. It's not clear if he was like partying or women or who knows what. Something he seems to allude was like, his people around him were like, dude, you got to chill out. And he was like, nah, I'm good. But he eventually was like, okay, I'm good. And retired from music in 1989.
That's early retirement.
But then he toured the last 5 years of his life. My friend Audra Kubat opened for him in Detroit, actually.
We'll get there.
Oh, sorry. Back it up.
So he says...
You're fitting right in, Jessi.
Oh, it's true. Painfully true. He said he just wanted to enjoy life in 1989. But if you look, he actually just became an actor. He was in the show 30-something. He was in Postcards from the Edge, a movie called Purgatory. He was in My Girl 2.
Yeah, I saw that in his credits.
Yeah. And then more recently was in the show Nashville that I never watched, but I'm vaguely aware of.
Not the movie Nashville.
No, it was like a TV show.
They found more Michigan company on 30-something. Timothy Busfield was from East Lansing.
All right. I've never even seen the show, so I don't...
Yeah, that was a little before your time and really mine. I was a kid when that was on.
I feel like I have reason to watch them now because he's my number one crush, so.
Mm-hmm.
JD, go back and watch him on
I think so,
everything.
Yeah.
Everything he was in.
As was hinted at, he returns to music in 2008. He put out 4 albums in that time span, which is the same as his first run at music. So he stayed busy. I listened to a few cuts here and there from those, and it's kind of jazzier than the early stuff, which was interesting. But yeah, he put out his last album in 2015. He was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2013. Then he passed away fairly recently, September 17th, 2024. He was about to go on tour in just like a couple weeks or something, and then passed away. It looks like they've kept private whatever the cause was, so yeah, he's no longer with us.
Yeah, I listened to some interviews from like a week or weeks before his death when he was about to go on tour, and just sad that he's no longer here, and sad that I did not ever see him. One of those things where you're like, oh, I'll catch him next time, and you shouldn't say that when someone is 78.
Yeah. That's anytime you see like the Rod Stewart tour that's coming right up. This is it. I mean, he's saying it's his final tour anyway, but it's the last chance, I'm sure. He's 80 now.
Or if you're wanting to see Willie Nelson, for Christ's sake, just go. He's like 93.
Yeah, you just saw him not too long ago.
Yeah, it was great still. But I digress. Let's play another cut. Jessi, what do you want to play him next?
I am going to play the first song on side 2, Simple Man, Simple Dream.
All right.
That'd be side B, track 1. A very short song. We're going to have to play a very short clip of this.
What if I fall in love with you, just like normal people do? Well, maybe I'd kill you, or maybe I'd be true. When I go down to get a job, sometimes it seems that people can read my mind and make money disappear while they're talking sweet and kind. Well, in some ways I'm like a child. You never seem to know what if a kind word ever crossed your mind. You never try to show it. When people don't know what you mean, they may laugh at you and call you green. They'll say your words are stupid and your plans are only schemes. Truth is simple, but seldom.
There were a few times listening to this that I had to wonder if Jeff Tweedy from Wilco is a JD fan. And I think he tends to be into stuff a little more esoteric and obscure than someone associated with the Eagles. At least, I'm sure he heard stuff like that growing up, but I couldn't find an interview where he cited him as a songwriting inspiration. But the opening lines of that one, what if I fall in love with you just like normal people do? Oh, nice sentiment. Well, maybe I'd kill you is the next line. And Jeff Tweedy occasionally has had moments in songs like Via Chicago off Summer Teeth, that opening line, well, I dreamed about killing you again last night and it felt all right to me. That's a jarring way to begin a song like that. And I felt the same way with that song right there. It was a little, whoa, I was a bit taken aback.
I know, I love that part.
Dark edge.
One of my favorite genres of lyrics is, I'm too broken to love you, but I'll try. But I might kill you in my effort. It's my favorite.
It's beautiful.
So yeah, just that really struck me as a little parallel, and some of the other senses of melody that he uses just seemed kind of Wilco-ish to me.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. We should go to Chicago and ask him.
Yeah, it's not too far from where we're at.
Just down the road.
Just down the road, a couple hours away.
Jeff, if you're listening, you can be a guest. Hit us up.
Yeah, I think we would allow Jeff Tweedy onto the program if he wanted to come talk an inexpensive, common, and underappreciated record that's waiting to be rediscovered with us. Well, Sean, did you happen to do that thing you do where you put together recommended similar inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered?
Yeah.
That people can find.
I sure did.
Are you going to recommend?
Jeremy's going to try to cut this off at the pass. I know what Jeremy's doing right now. He wants to know what, Jeremy?
Are you going to recommend Hotel California over and over?
Oh, that's not what I thought you were going to do. I thought you were going, because of the David Campbell thing, I thought you were going to ask if he was going to recommend Isle of You by Jimmy Spheris.
No.
I will not be recommending Hotel California because it's been a long day and I hate the fucking Eagles.
Get out of my car.
Yeah. And I will not be recommending Isle of You because that's too early. It doesn't even make sense. Come on. What are you talking about?
Wow. We just got schooled, Jeremy.
All right.
Yeah. You know what? I'm just going to throw this for an entire loop real quick and say that before I recommend these albums, I wanted to comment about that song we heard for just a second, if I could. Could we just do that?
You want to say something on this episode other than your recommended similar albums, Sean?
I think I've talked a couple times on this episode so far.
Well, what do you have to say?
Well, I just wanted to shout out that I really like the piano sound on this album, especially on that last track. Like we've talked about with other instrumentation on this album, it's very simple. It's in the background and it really just serves the song and the vocals. But we should mention that a guy named Andrew Gold played piano on this album, and he's a very important soft rock artist who had a huge influence on the California soft rock sound of the 70s. And he's got several albums under his own name that would be worthy entries on this podcast in the future.
Well, it makes sense that you would know that, but Jeremy would have overlooked him.
Yeah. Just had to get that out there for the 2 or 3 Andrew Gold heads out there who are going to be furious that we didn't mention.
They're going to be Richie furious.
Perfect. Nicely done.
I remember seeing that name and thinking, well, that's a cool name. And then going down the line.
That's why we're a team.
Yeah, you can always, when you have that thought, Jeremy, you can just say, if it's important, Sean will let people know.
That's what I count on. It's one of you two to pick me up, the wind beneath my wings.
Yeah. Yeah. In one of our Patreon episodes, you didn't know who Blowfly was and almost overlooked him in the story.
You'll never let me live it down.
And 8 people heard it.
All right. Well, now that we've recommended Andrew Gold, I've got 3 other artists and some albums to recommend. First up, Michael Martin Murphey and his 1975 album Blue Sky Night Thunder. Are any of y'all familiar with that one?
No.
No, I can't say I am. The artist's name sounds vaguely familiar, but I wouldn't know anything about him.
Yeah, you probably recognize a few of his albums. He's got a few that are real easy to find. That one is probably the closest approximation to this album's sound that I could think of. Michael Murphey is known as kind of a pioneer of progressive country, which, it's similar to like country rock. It's just like this album, it kind of tends to incorporate a lot more jazz influence and other styles going on, but it's still distinctly country singer-songwriter. Excellent album. Highly recommended.
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of cosmic American music, country rock, but I really can't think of many instances where prog works its way into country. Wilco might be the closest.
Yeah, that makes sense. Next up, an album I have recommended, I believe, one other time before. It's kind of an obscure artist. This was the only album he put out, but I just love it, and it's pretty cheap if you happen to find a copy. I'm talking about Charlie Bleak and his country rock album Let Me In from 1976.
What a name.
What a
the name alone, Charlie Bleak.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely got a lot of similarities to this. It's country, but there's some really interesting arrangements on it. It's got that 60s country rock influence, but you can also really tell that it's looking into the mid 70s and beyond as far as incorporating other styles and influences. But yeah, Charlie Bleak, Let Me In, 1976. Go find a copy if you can locate one. And then My last recommendation is an artist that I'm pretty sure we've actually never recommended before. This is his fourth and final album from 1976, Ports of the Heart by Jimmy Spheris.
I had to wonder if you really were. I knew it.
Gotta admit, it's a pretty good similar album, though.
Jeremy's
striking album cover. Another California singer-songwriter who's just a complete dish.
Oh, boy.
Well, very good, Sean. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jessi, before we wrap things up here, you're someone who I know to always have a lot going on.
Mistress of none.
Do you have anything that you would like to plug for the people to check out? I mean, I would recommend checking out your music first and foremost, but Jessi makes excellent music.
Oh, that's nice of you.
With some very strong country influences.
Indeed.
Where can they find your music?
So I just put out, my musical project that I still have in California where I used to live, just put out our third record in November. Our name is 8 Bells, the word 8, and then Belles. I'm the only girl in the band. Everyone's very confused by that. And that album is called Ghost Lights, and that's on all the things. Mm-hmm. I also have an EP under my own name, Jessi Phillips. And then I also do journalism, and I will have, by the time this comes out, a journalism piece on WMUK, Kalamazoo's NPR station.
Yeah, I don't know if we've mentioned the fact that you're in the room with Jeremy and I.
Yes.
You live in the greater Kalamazoo area.
I do live here.
Yeah, so that's that WMUK is the local NPR station, and yeah, you do a lot of journalistic research pieces for WMUK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I still have a foot in California musically, like I'm still doing stuff there with music, but yeah, mostly here.
Very worth checking out. So you can find that through WMUK's website. If for those listening afar, we have a lot of people outside. I think we have more people not in Kalamazoo listening to us than Kalamazooians who are listening to us.
True. And fair trigger warning if you decide to Google 8 Bells.
Right.
You might find horrifying horse footage.
I know. It was a big mistake on our part, but we just had to go with it.
That's a warning for Jeremy mostly, since he's known for...
Oh, no, I loved it. But if anyone out there doesn't hate horses, just be careful Googling that.
Yeah, I know.
Only click on the Bandcamp links.
Yes. Our logo for a long time was a horse with its leg in a sling.
Oh.
Very macabre.
Well, thanks again for joining us, Jessi.
I'm so glad you asked me. I had a great time.
And it won't take us 6 years to have you on again. We promise. Like next season. How's next season sound? Season 7, come back and talk. I don't know. You have some time to think about whatever you want to talk next with us.
Every time you have on an album that I like, I'm like, damn it, I want to give my uninformed opinion about that album.
Well, you gave, if this was uninformed information, bring it anytime. Yeah, thank you. We've been meaning to talk about him. We should have covered him well before his passing, but you know what? There's so many musicians to get to. We're still due to cover a Linda Ronstadt record, so, maybe we'll consider that. Mm-hmm. There's most of her stuff. There's a few that are now kind of above that $10 mark, but most of them are would be eligible for the show. Mm-hmm. So what were we going to go out on?
I would like to go out on the final track, which is the title track.
Black Rose?
Yeah, I think this track really captures the vibe and the essence of the album. I mean, the arrangements on this album are, there's a lot of variety, but I think this kind of captures the mood or the feel. So, this is an album to be listened to like after 8 p.m.,
Oh, yeah, it's a nighttime album.
It's a nighttime album. You listen to it while you're like putting on your mascara, like feathering your hair. Before you go out, you're going to have a great evening.
It's like reverse curfew.
Yeah.
You got to wait till after a certain time.
Yeah.
I would say that this sounds the most like what I would expect to hear based on the album cover.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot I was going to share this tidbit. and I think is a nice final view into JD. He decided to go by JD instead of John David because he saw one Johann Sebastian Bach went by J.S. Bach, and he was like, that's cool, and if he could do it, I could do it. So,
wow, he puts himself in that elite.
yeah. Which could be fair. I think there's an argument for it, but it alludes to that swagger he's got.
He does have some swagger. I love when anyone changes their name halfway through their, or, well into their music career.
Yeah.
It's funny that, yeah, especially since he didn't really seem too concerned with the fame portion, that he's still like, I got to rebrand.
Yep. And everybody knows him as the Bach of the SoCal sound, right?
They will now, because this is where they're hearing about him for the first time.
Beautiful.
Well, very good. Thank you, listeners, for checking out another episode of I'd Buy That for $1. Of course, you can always support us over on patreon.com/I'd Buy That podcast. Help us keep the lights on here and get some cool bonus content in return. Several tiers you can subscribe to. Bonus episodes, mixes, vinyl, you name it. So once again, that's patreon.com/I'd Buy That podcast. Thank you, Jessi.
You're welcome.
We're going to go out on the title track, J.D. Souther, Black Rose. I'm Peter Cook.
I'm Jeremy Ruggles.
I'm Sean Hartman.
I'm Jessi Phillips.
Side B, track 5, Black Rose.